What's up you guys, it's Mike here. So in this video we're going to be taking this shot and turning it into this. Let's go. So a lot of you guys have been asking me how I edit my photos, specifically automotive photos, but more general, just what my editing process is, how I go about things. So hopefully in this video I'll be able to kind of describe at least some of it, at least with these shots right here. My editing style kind of changes from photo to photo. I mean, there are some basic things that I do kind of across the board, but aside from the basics, it really just depends on what the photo is of, what the mood was that day, what the weather's like, stuff like that. But for this particular shot, what I figured I'd do is just kind of just recreate this edit. And of course, on the thumbnail, you guys see that, this white spot and this white spot is gone. This is something that I'm not going to be doing in Lightroom. I'll still try to include it in the video, but this is just done in Photoshop. Basically, Photoshop just takes a look at these white areas, takes a look at the textures around it, and just fills it in. So that's for later. We like I said, we may get into that, we may not, just depending on how long this video goes for. But the first part of my editing process, oddly enough, starts before I even get into Lightroom. It starts in taking the shot, and if you notice, there are three different photos right here. This one that's, I don't know, let's say maybe average exposure. This one's a little bit darker. This one's a little bit brighter. Now the reason I took three of these is so when I brought these shots back into Lightroom, I could blend them all together and get all the details in the colors of the sky and then all the details in the shadows here on the foreground. So what we'll do, or in Lightroom, what that's called is doing an HDR, high dynamic range shot. So the first thing I'm going to do is take all three of these shots, highlight all three, right click, and then go to Photo Merge HDR. Now for those of you who are not familiar with Lightroom, these options on the side for de-ghost amount, none, low, medium, high, these are basically if you're doing an HDR, like a 3, 5, 7, 9 shot HDR image, and things are changing in the scene in between the time you're taking the individual images. So for example, if you're taking a photo of like a sidewalk, like an intersection, and people are crossing the intersection during the time you're taking the shots, from the time you take your first shot to the time you take your last shot, the positions of the people will have changed, and if you select this none de-ghost amount in that circumstance, you'll get like blurred half people, half the person will be somewhere, the other half will be in another place. It just looks weird. But so in that case, you'd click low, medium, or high, just depending on how much movement was in the scene to kind of eliminate what's called the ghosting. But in this case, since nothing was moving, we're going to click none, and we're going to click merge. Lightroom's going to do its work here. You see the progress bar up here in the top left. Okay, so we have our HDR image. Now, if you notice right here, the file name of this photo changed. Over here, they were, ARW, ARW, ARW. These are Sony RAW files. This is a combined HDR that Lightroom made. So that's why we have a different file extension .dng. Okay, so that's pretty much the beginning of the editing process for this Lamborghini. This car in particular it looks amazing in person. Taking photos of it, and at least from the few times that I have, has been somewhat difficult because the curves on the car, for lack of a better term, they're odd to me. It was very difficult getting a good composition of the car, a good angle of the car like higher up, and then a good angle of the car further down, closer to the ground. This, in my opinion, about this height right here in comparison to the car, is kind of the sweet spot from what I've found. Of course, he's done some mods and things on here, but the basic curvature of the top and the size is pretty much the same across the board. But so yeah, so let me say one more thing about taking this shot before we get into the actual editing, and that's how it's framed. I've been to this parking garage before. I love this parking garage. And I purposely tried to center the car right in front of the Westin Hotel here. And I forget what these two buildings on the side are called, but this was intentional. So we have kind of like, a little bit of a foreground element. The car would be in the midground, and of course you have the background of the photo being the Atlanta skyline with the Westin Hotel kind of in the center. Now with that being said, let's get into the editing. So we'll go from the library module over here to the develop module, and here we go. Now I have some presets that I've made myself. I'm not going to use those. I'm just going to start from scratch here. So normally what I do, I like being able to bring the detail out of shots normally. So normally what I'll do is raise the shadows all the way, bring down the highlights all the way. And since this is an HDR image, doing this will normally allow you to see a lot of the details in the shadows of, you know, the lighter photo, and a lot of the details in the highlights in the darker photo. So now that that's done, we're going to reset our white point. I'm going to hold down the Alt key. I think it's the Option key on if you're on a Mac. Hold down the Alt key, raise my whites. That stuff is blown out a little bit in the back. I think that's okay. I don't want too much of the sky blown out, so I think I'm going to stop it right there. I'm going to set my black point. Maybe like 5% of the photo be black, something like that I think is good. I'm going to decrease the clarity about -15 just because I like a little bit of a softer image. And let's do, oh, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to set my profile. I'm so used to doing this in presets, I forgot to do it here. Okay, so we'll set the lens profile and remove chromatic aberration, that's fine. And let's transform, let's say auto. So what the transform tab does, again, if you're new to Lightroom, is just kind of like, it makes things look more natural. So if you see like up in the corners here, even though I applied a lens correction profile, things are still kind of like bowed off to the side. These transform options help to straighten things out. Level looks okay. Vertical. So what vertical does, I like using vertical a lot, especially in cities because you have, you know, buildings going straight up in the air. I think I'm going to use this one. Full. That didn't really change much. Vertical. I'm torn between auto and vertical. You know what? I'm going to go with auto. We'll go with auto. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is crop it because there's way too much foreground here. We're going to go to a 1x1 and we're going to move this all the way up. There we go. So now I have the car in the center of the frame. There's not too much foreground down here. We'll get rid of that spot in a second. So I guess the ratio of the size of the photo that the Lamborghini takes up compared to the rest of the photo is pretty good to me. Okay, let's change the white balance to auto. Initial thoughts, this is a little bit warm, but let's raise the magenta just a tad. Okay, I think that's all right. I like adding magenta in my photos. It just makes it look a little bit more appealing to the eye, in my opinion. And again, let me just remind everyone watching, this is just how I edit things. Like, everybody edits things differently, and this is, what I did over here in terms of just, the basic adjustments is pretty much how I start every photo, but everything after that is depends very much on the particular photo. So what I'm noticing right now is that this car, the Lamborghini, is kind of dark, so we need to bring some detail out of the car a little bit more, and the sky's kind of bright. I think I'm going to lower my white point. If you take your mouse button and hover over this highlight clipping right here, you can see in the red all the spots of the photo that are blown out. I'm going to take my whites, lower them just a tad. Okay, yeah, that's good. I don't want things too blown out. I think it's fine if there's a little bit of white in the sky. That's not going to bother me all that much. And this is not a shot that you're going to frame or anything like that anyways. It's more for social media purposes. Okay, so let's do this. Let's go to our gradient filter. Put a gradient filter on the top of the photo. Decrease that just a tad. Maybe bring it down a little bit more. We'll put one on the bottom. Now the purposes of these gradient filters, or the purpose of what I'm doing here, is just to darken parts of the photo that don't necessarily need to be all that bright. So the intention of this, obviously, the subject of the photo is the Lamborghini. My intention in editing this is to lead the viewer's eye, not that it's all that difficult because of how it's framed, but help the viewer focus on the Lamborghini and then have everything else around it kind of be like a second thought. Like once you focus on the Lamborghini and take that in, then you start noticing things around it and be like, oh, that's a nice building back there, or things like that. So that's kind of my intention. Sometimes it works out in editing, sometimes I can't get it right, but so we're going to add a radial filter over the car, brighten it up just a little bit. Let's raise the exposure here. I think that's about good. Yeah, that's about good. So something else I'm going to do, since I decreased the overall clarity of the photo, I'm going to add some clarity on this radial filter to kind of counterbalance that. We'll say 15. 15 is good for now. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do a little bit more. Do 20. That looks good. I think I'm going to raise the exposure on this just a little bit more. No, I don't want to do it too much. I think one's fine. Now, the sun is coming from over here. The sun is actually behind the buildings, but this side of the car is a little bit brighter, and I kind of want to bring that out on the left side of the photo. So I think what I'm going to do is add another gradient filter that keeps doing the default is -3. Oh, that's because we have burn. Okay, anyways, that's fine. I'm going to make the left side of the photo a little bit brighter. Let's drag this all the way over here. Now, in doing this, we may need to change some other adjustments, but that's fine. This is just kind of the editing process. Yeah, I think this side of the, you know what, let's make this a little bit warmer as well. Maybe add some magenta. Starting to look pretty good. Maybe a little bit more magenta. Okay, yeah, that looks good. Now, something I'm starting to notice is the left side of the car here, from the viewer's perspective, looks a little strange. It looks kind of discolored. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click the brush tool right here in the upper right, excuse me. And what that's going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to brush out or brush back in parts of this gradient filter that are applied to the image. So if we click this down here, show selected mask overlay, all of this red stuff is basically like where this gradient is applied. So if we slide it this way, you see more of the photo becoming red. If we slide it this way, we see less of the photo becoming red. Move back where it was. We don't want the gradient filter being applied to the door or this side of the car because it, in my opinion, just makes it look a little strange. I'm going to hold down the Alt key, or I think it's Option on Mac. That turns this plus into a minus. And if you click your mouse and drag it along wherever you want to drag it along, that takes off the gradient. So I'm going to take it off of this door right here, and maybe a little bit more of this side of the car. Let's uncheck this, see how it looks. Okay, yeah, that looks better. That looks better. So we can see the changes that the gradient filters have made if we just click this little switch, turn off gradient filter. That turns off all the gradient filters, and then we turn it back on. A little bit of a difference. I like it. Let's do this. The corners, in my opinion, I think need to be a little bit darker. Let's add a vignette. Vignettes are added in here. From my experience, what I found is if you bring the highlight priority amount down to -11, that's kind of the sweet spot. Anything more than that, the vignette starts to get more and more noticeable. Anything less than that, again, my opinion, my experience, it's just not as noticeable. So I found it -11 works pretty good for me. Okay, so looking back over this photo some more, I think I want the ground a little bit darker, and I think I want the sky a little bit darker. This happens, like if you're editing a photo, you're just gonna see more the longer you edit it, and you may want to do a little bit more the longer you edit it. So this is not uncommon with me. I'll go back and change things all the time, and then an hour or so later I'll end up with a finished product that I like. Hopefully this video is not going to be anywhere close to an hour, but I may be going back and changing things a little bit here and there over the course of the editing process. I think I want to decrease the saturation overall a little bit, maybe like that. Yeah, okay, so now this is starting to look pretty cool. So here's the before. You can go to this view by clicking the I'm not sure what the key is called, but it's the key right above the inner key. Before, after, after. These are all the things we've done to it so far. Let's change some of the hue, saturation, luminance of the color. So if you're new to Lightroom, basically this tab allows you to change how different colors look. So let's take a look at the brake caliper right here. It's normally red. If I slide the red slider this way, it gets more purple. If I slide it this way, it gets more orange. Now if you notice on the red hue slider, you have more of a deepish red over here, more of an orangish over here. I think the red's fine. This is really the only part of the photo that's red, and I'll just leave it like it is. The orange, and if you notice there's a lot more orange on the buildings than maybe the front of the car. I think I want to Move that to the left just slightly more toward the red. Maybe about right there. The green, I don't think there's any green in here. No, there's no green. Any aqua? No. So basically what I'm doing right now, I'm just moving these sliders just to see, you know, what colors there are, how these sliders change, how things look. I think I want to decrease the blues to about right there. That looks good. The purple, there's not much purple, but sliding it this way makes a little bit of a difference in the sky. So moving it to the right makes the sky look a little bit more purple. Moving it this way makes the sky look a little bit more blue and aqua. I think I like this. Magenta. There's not much magenta. Okay, let's go to the saturation. So decreasing the red's really only going to change the brake caliper here. I think I'm going to increase the red a little bit. I think I want that brake caliper to pop in terms of its color. So we'll keep it like that. Orange, I don't want the orange to be too prominent. I think I'm going to decrease the orange a little bit. Yellow, I think yellow we're going to leave 0. There wasn't any green. Aqua, no sense in changing that. Blue, I think I'm going to leave blue where it is. This looks fine. Magenta. So here's something that happens. You guys, if you're doing this on your own, you need to be careful. A little bit of these sliders oftentimes goes a long way. If you notice how if we move the purple all the way up here to 100% or 100 saturation, see these lines that we get? So you have to be careful with these, you know, moving these sliders around. Same thing happens with the magenta. We're going to keep that like it is. All right, let's go over to the luminance. The luminance tab controls the brightness. I think I'm going to increase the brightness of the brake caliper just a little bit. Orange, we'll keep that like it is. Yellow brightness, we'll keep that like it is. I think I'm gonna put some radial filters around here in a second, just for exposure levels and things. Green, there wasn't any green. Aqua, nope. Blue, let's raise that just a tad. Purple, that really doesn't do much. We'll keep that at 0. And magenta, we'll keep that where it is. Okay, next let's go down here to split toning. So what split toning does, if you notice, we have a highlight section, we have a shadows section. What split toning does is it assigns a color to the highlights of the photo and also to the shadows of the photo. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key and I'm going to click on the hue and I'm going to move it around. So if you see, sliding this around makes the highlights, the brighter parts of the image, a certain color. Now what I want to do, I think, is I'm going to make this around in the mid-20s. This is fine. And we'll increase the saturation maybe to 10 or so. So this is going to give the highlights of the photo just a slightly warmer color. And I want to give the shadows a little bit of a cooler color. So we're going to, again, hold down the Alt key, move the hue slider over this way to maybe around 214, that's fine. And then increase the saturation probably a little bit more than the highlights. Maybe around 20. All right, I think I want to decrease this to maybe like 15 and maybe increase this just a tad. Okay. All right, I think split toning is good for now. So let's turn this off and back on. So this is before, this is after. I like the effect that it added here. We'll close that out. So this photo is coming along. We're not quite done yet. Let me take off the spot down here. It's kind of annoying me. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on the spot removal tool, increase the size, and then just click right there. And then Lightroom will find somewhere else in the photo that it thinks should be, would fit. And I did a pretty good job. Most of that kind of stuff I do in Photoshop just because, in my experience, it's easier to do in Photoshop. But that was fine. I still think the left side of the photo needs to be brighter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a radial filter. I'm going to start it way up here in the corner. I'm going to hold the Shift key down and then just drag. And I want this radial filter to pretty much take up the entire image from top to bottom, left to right here. And we don't want it darker. We want it brighter. Okay, here we go. Maybe not that bright. Let's check my highlights. We may have to do something back here. Maybe around like that. I'm going to make it a little bit warmer. Maybe 26 for the yellow is good, and then I don't want to add too much magenta. I think 20, maybe a little bit less. 19. Okay, I think that's good. I think when I edited the first images, or when I edited the first image, there was no dehaze tool in Lightroom, and the dehaze tool can add a pretty cool effect to photos sometimes. I think I like this. So again, I'm running into the same issue with this left side of the car with this radio filter than we did with the gradient filter that we put on this side. So I'm gonna do the brush tool again, hold down the Alt key, and just take this radio filter off of this side of the door a little bit. I think that's good. Brush it out a little bit more. Okay. Yep, that looks good. I'm gonna add another radio filter. We don't want it to be 3. I'm gonna add another one right here on the tire, and I'm gonna increase the clarity on the tire because these tires were sick. I want that tire to pop. Maybe increase the exposure here. I think that's good. I don't want to do it too much. Maybe do another radio filter on the front of the car just to make the front a little bit brighter. Maybe add even more clarity on the front of the car. Not too much. Maybe 10 or so. Okay, that looks good. All right, so we still have these highlights we need to do. I'm looking at this photo again. I think it's a little bit on the bright side, so I'm going to decrease the exposure of the photo now. I think all these edits we've done made it a little bit bright. So instead of going back and changing all the exposure levels on all the filters that we did, I'm just going to decrease the exposure as a whole. And I think what I'm going to do is, well, I'll try and add a radial filter back here. I'm going to click this this arrow to show the highlight clipping. Hold down the Shift key, drag this over there. I only want this radial filter to apply to the part of the sky, the part of the photo behind the building. So I'm going to turn the range mask on. I'm going to go to luminance. Let's turn that off. I'm going to click Show Luminance Mask. We want the range. We don't really want it to affect anything in front of the photo. We just want it to affect the sky. So I'm going to drag that up. So now you see the mask is only affecting the sky. All right. Turn that off. I think I may increase it just a tad to make this a little bit bigger. And then we will decrease the exposure up here, and we'll keep a check on the highlight clipping. Okay, there we go. Looking good. Yep, looks pretty good. Okay, I think we are about done here. This is looking pretty good. Maybe up the exposure just a little bit more. Like I said before, I'm fine if there's a little bit of clipping back here. It's fine with me. That looks pretty good. Let's see if adding any contrast makes it look better. Maybe a little bit. We can add a little bit. Maybe like 5 or 6. I don't want to add too much. Okay, so we've gone from this to this. This is how I edited this shot of this Lamborghini. The next thing to do is to bring this into Photoshop and get rid of these white spots in the photo. And to do that, we want to go up here to File, Export. Now I already have a preset here for exporting to Photoshop. If you don't have Photoshop, let me go back and do this first. If you don't have Photoshop, then obviously what you'll need to do is do a different transformation up here, maybe like level. That doesn't look too bad. The buildings are kind of bowed off to the side, but it is what it is. This full doesn't look all that. All right, so we had auto. I think auto. Let me go back and look at level. Yeah, I think auto looks the best. Level doesn't look all that bad, but auto looks the best. Okay, so let's go up here, File, Export, and to export in Photoshop, you want to scroll all the way down here to the bottom. After export, open an Adobe Photoshop CC 2019 or whatever version you're using, and you want under File Settings, you want the image format to be PSD. Once those two things are set, I normally do 300 pixels per inch. I'll remove the location info. What else is here? And I'll put it in a subfolder called Untitled Export in the same folder as the original image. So those are my settings. Obviously, you don't have to have the same settings, but we'll click export, and then after a couple seconds, this will be exported into Photoshop. Okay, now if you notice from Lightroom to Photoshop, the color's changed. That's on my end. That's not on your end. This is something I'm still trying to figure out what's going on, but after exporting from Photoshop, the photo should look more or less like this and not this warm weirdness. Again, I have no idea what's going on, but okay, so first thing we're going to do in Photoshop is drag this layer over to copy it. Photoshop, if you're not careful, you can destroy a lot of your work in Photoshop if you only work with one layer. So for each series of edits that I do in Photoshop, I'll just create new layers for them. So that just helps to preserve my work. So I'm going to call this layer, I don't know, like basic edits. And there are a few things I want to do here. I want to get rid of these lines in the ground, and obviously I want to fill in these spaces on the sides of the photo. Let's get rid of the lines first. So I'm gonna click the healing tool, spot healing tool, right here. The shortcut for that is J on the keyboard. I'm going to zoom in all the way to the photo and change the brush size. You can change the brush size by right-clicking anywhere on the screen and just clicking the up arrow to your liking, up and down arrows. Okay, that's about that. Now I'll speed up this part of the video, but because it's gonna be kind of boring, you guys watching me take out all these lines. But basically what you do is you just click and drag over what you want to take out, and Lightroom will do that. Now it messed up over here a little bit, so what we'll do is we'll Control Z, we'll zoom in a little bit more and do this kind of one step at a time. Do that part, this part, that part, that part. You got to be a little bit careful getting closer to the car. Try and get rid of that. Okay. This. And again, this is for social media. It's not like this is going on a website, although I think I do have this this particular shot on my website. But so we'll get as close to the car as we can. Okay, so now we're getting kind of close to where the spot healing tool is not working as well. So what we'll do here, we'll click the lasso tool, move down to polygon tool, so we can make straight lines. Make a straight line from here to there, and we'll just make a box. And this box is kind of going to define our work area. So now we can get pretty close to the car and not worry about actually touching the car and having the car be messed up. So this is still not doing the job. So I think what I'm going to do now is click the clone stamp tool. The clone stamp tool is almost the same thing as the spot healing tool, except you get to pick what area of the photo is copied. So we'll click somewhere over here, hold down the Alt key, and then click your mouse button. And then that tells Photoshop you want to copy this area to over here, and then just click and drag right there. Control D to unselect. And there we go. Now that line's pretty much gone. Now we could do a little bit more with this discoloration right here. I'm not going to, though, for the purposes of this video. So before, after, before, after. And basically what I'm going to do is every other line I will get rid of. And we'll speed up that process right now. Okay, and I think for the purposes of this video, that's good enough. If I were doing this to more professionally, I would definitely clean things up a little bit more. But you guys get the idea. So we got rid of all the lines: before, after, before, after. It's a small difference, but I think it's just less distractions in the photo. Okay, so we'll copy this layer again, and I'm going to call this layer, we'll say the white sides. So if we were to export this as a PNG, basically these sides would be transparent. You see this checkered background in the back? That means there is no data here for the photo. It's just we have the photo, and then right here is totally transparent. So we need to fix that. So what I'm going to do, what I would normally do, and I think it's going to be easier to do over on this side first, is use the use the healing brush first, And we'll just make it big, and we're just going to tell Lightroom we want to heal all of this over here. So we'll just kind of highlight all of this right here, and this, there should be enough, you know, general data over here for it to be okay, and it is. Once we start getting up into this area, Photoshop has a little bit more trouble, I guess, copying things from one area of the photo to another. We'll do the same thing over here. Again, there should be enough data nearby, and the textures are pretty much the same over here to be fine. Yeah, there's a little bit of a mismatch over here. Let's go a little bit lower. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so yeah, now we're getting a little bit too close to this this concrete slab here that we're large. So Photoshop is starting to pick up these textures over here and copy them over here. I don't want it to do that, so we'll undo, and we'll just manually copy maybe something from over here to over there, because this wall would continue over here, and this concrete slab ends right here. So let's go back over to this side though. So what I was saying I would normally do is I would normally click the magic wand tool and then just click here. And what Photoshop will do is it will highlight this entire section and fill in what it thinks needs to be filled in. Sometimes this works okay, sometimes it doesn't. When there's these really high frequency textures like this, more often than not it doesn't work all that well, but let's try it out. So we want to press Shift F5 to bring up the fill window. We want to do a content aware fill. So what this is going to tell Photoshop is, Photoshop, you just take a look around and see what should be there based on other parts of the photo. We'll click OK, and it'll work. That doesn't look too bad. We have a little bit of discrepancy up here. So let's do it one more time. Shift F5, content aware. Sometimes the more you do this, the better it gets. We'll do it one more time. I think I like the first, well, let's move forward. Redo fill. I think I like this one the most. Okay, Control D to deselect. We can go back and fix this manually. I'm not going to do that in this video because it'd be painstakingly boring to watch, but I can tell you what I would do and what I did for the other photo. Oh, okay. So let me do this. You guys see this white banding right here? This is something I should have done before, but it's a good thing that I found this, so now you guys get to see how to fix that. Let's undo. Okay. The very small amount of banding right there was from, I guess, this 1 pixel space in between the clear part of the photo and over here. So what we want to do is we want to select our selection over here, expand, and we're going to expand by 10 pixels. All right, and if you notice, our selection just grew larger by 10 pixels. Now we're going to press Shift F5, content aware, OK, and now that white banding shouldn't be there anymore. Control D to deselect, zoom in, and it's not. Wow, I did a really good job right here. Okay, so even zoomed out, you can kind of tell things aren't right over on this side of the photo. If it were a small enough part of the photo where you couldn't tell at all zoomed out, then I would just leave it like it is. But let's go ahead and start fixing some. I'll show you how I would fix some of this, and then that would apply to the whole thing. And that's basically just copy pasting from other parts of the photo. So we're going to use the clone stamp tool for that. Clone stamp. I want to copy, let's make this a little bit larger. I think that's good. So basically we want to copy some of this to over here to get rid of all these curvatures and things. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key again, click right here. The closer we can get to over here, the better, because these things are going to get larger the further over to the side of the photo we get. And let's see, I'm going to paste. Where did we copy from? I forget. We'll try this. Okay. So I'm just going to paste right there, go up and down. You need to be very careful not to go too far up and down. Just so we don't. Sometimes it really just depends on the photo, but in cases like this, you really have to be careful like how far you move. So now you can see we're kind of messing up the top part of the photo here. So you have to really be careful with what you're doing this. But yeah, basically this is just what we do. We just copy paste from other parts of the photo. We'll copy this one, maybe go over to right here, try and line it up with this part, and then just click and drag. Click and drag. Yeah, and then we would basically just do this for the rest of the area that needed to be changed. And you guys can see how this can start taking a long time. But yeah, there's that side. This side's going to be a little bit different because, well, before I say that, let's see. So let's go to our magic wand tool, select that. We'll go to filter, or we'll go to select, modify, expand by 10 pixels. Zoom out a little bit, Shift F5 for content aware. Go ahead and do that. Yeah, this is just a mess. We'll try it again. Yeah, that's a mess. Okay, so I'm not gonna bore you guys with press Control D to deselect. I'm not gonna bore you guys with filling this in on this video, but basically I would do the same thing on this side as I did with this side, except we'd just be copying textures over here to over here. And I do remember doing it with this shot, and it took forever. So let me grab the final image real quick. All right, so this is the final image. So let's go back to Lightroom. This is what we started with. This was after all of our Lightroom edits. We exported it over to Photoshop. This is all the work we did in Photoshop, and of course, we'd have to fix this side as well. I'm not gonna bore you guys with that. But before and after in Photoshop, and then this is the final image. So a big change from start to finish, that's for sure. So let's do this. Before, after. Before, after. So if you guys notice, I basically used these small textures right here and copied them all the way up. It was a very, very long, painstaking process. But yeah, there you go. So that's kind of my my editing process, my workflow. Depending on the photo, it can be somewhat lengthy or somewhat short if if there are not all too many things that need to be taken out of the photo. And in fact, in this final version, I think I left a lot of the lines that I took out in this shot here. That's fine. This is pretty much at least what we did at first in Lightroom is how I edit all of my photos in the beginning, almost all of my photos. Again, it really depends. Feel free to copy this process if you've stumbled upon this video and you're just starting out learning Lightroom. I've pretty much everything that I do in terms of editing, almost everything, I learned from other people first, and then I've kind of made it my own style. And I've gotten to the point now where I can I know what I'm doing pretty well in Lightroom, and I can think for myself pretty well and make changes and adjustments accordingly based on what's in the photo, rather than just memorizing what other people have done and then trying to copy it. But I mean, everybody has to start somewhere, and I'm the type of person who does better basically copying other people while I'm learning, and then like in the process of copying, and copying is the wrong word, but mimicking what other people are doing, that's when I learn, when I actually implement that on my own. And the more you do it, the more the better you get. So yeah, feel free to copy my editing style for the time being, and until you get better yourself. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a like. Please give it a thumbs up. Comment if you want to, if you'd like to see any more editing videos or tutorials. Let me know. Share the video if you think other people will benefit. The goal for the channel is to reach 1,000 subs by the end of the year, and we're a little bit over halfway there. I'm really going to try and make that happen as best I can by the end of the year. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for me, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll see y'all next time.